Hi everyone, and welcome back out to Harvest Hills Ranch. Today we're going to be taking a look at the framework for a good workout. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Arland Hill, and I have a passion for all things nutrition, health, and wellness related, and I enjoy sharing the information that I've learned over the years with you. Now today we're going to be looking at the framework for a good workout. And I thought it would be good to start us off with an analogy, which is simply a home. If you look at a home has a frame, a framework which it is built around. And if we don't have that framework, if we don't have that outer shell, that structure, putting up the walls, doing anything else, hanging sheetrock, all that stuff is for nothing because it's not going to amount to anything and it's going to fall down and fall apart within a fairly short period of time. So we need a framework for your workout. Now, what does a good workout framework look like? Well, let me go through 5 different steps that you can walk through. And I'm actually going to give you, let me rephrase that. I'm going to give you 6, but there's 1 and then there's 5 core. So here's what I mean by that. When you're looking to engage in your workout, the first thing that you should have already done is you should have written out in your training journal what your workout is going to look like. You should have, taken a few moments, write out the sequence of activities that you're going to be engaging in, and then what intensity you're going to do those things, sets and reps, things of this nature. So the first thing you want to do is just get a feel for your workout again by just doing a quick glance, a quick review of what you wrote down in your training journal. Now, let's talk about the 5 core things though that are a part of this framework for a good workout. Now, number 1 at the top of the list is you want to do some type of warm-up. And there's all kinds of different warm-ups that you can do. And I think the easiest way to break these down is simply think about what the main exercises, the main activities that you're going to be doing for your workout are. Let me give you some examples on this. If I'm going to be focusing on lower body activities, a good warm-up is going to be doing, say for example, a bike, spending 5 minutes on the bike, getting some blood flowing through the lower extremities. If you're going to be doing upper body activities where you're going to be doing some type of pressing movement, whether it's out in front of you or overhead, or maybe you're going to be pressing things away from you. If you're doing movements like that, do some jumping jacks where you can get some upper and lower body in there. Do some, arm rotations, or do just light movement is really all we're looking for to get the blood circulating here. We're just trying to get the overall core temperature of the body up to where your tissues aren't cold and you're decreasing your risk of injury. You're not jumping into an activity at a higher intensity with cold muscle tissue. You want to have that tissue warmed up, increase the elasticity of the tissue, and again, your risk of injury decreases. Now, the next thing that we want to do, and I like to start to incorporate in more mobility here. This is where in the step 2 of a good workout, good framework for a workout, we're going to look at the dynamic stretch. Now, let me contrast this for a minute because most of you might think of stretching as what we think about as a static stretch. The classic example of a static stretch is someone bending over, touching their toes, or trying to touch their toes and stretching their hamstrings. That's a static stretch. The beginning of your workout, before you've got into your core activities, is not the time to be doing that. What we want to do on the front end of a workout is we want to do more dynamic stretching. And so with dynamic stretching, these are going to be movements that are going to mimic the general exercise pattern of our core activities. So again, let me use the lower body here. Let's say that I'm going to, as part of my core activities, I'm going to incorporate in some squatting activities. Well, with those squatting activities, a dynamic stretch would be doing things to elongate the muscles of the quads. They would be to elongate the muscles of the hamstrings, because these are the 2 primary muscle groups that are involved in a squatting activity. So we want to do things that are going to take the muscles through a more complete range of motion versus just going to an endpoint range of motion and holding that. Again, that's not ideal. We want fluidity in these dynamic stretch movements, and we want them to somewhat mimic what you're going to be doing as part of your core activity. Now, again, I go back to where we started at, which is the training journal. The warm-up, the dynamic stretch, those are all things that I write down in my training journal as well, because I have a sequence that I want to go through with those. Again, we want to stay efficient in what we're trying to achieve here. We want to stay efficient with our time management. Now, we've got our warm-up, we've got our dynamic stretch. Now is where we get into step 3, which is going to be the core of our workout. This is the pinnacle of our framework, if you will, because this is where, if we're thinking about going in and doing a weight training session, this is going to be the part of the workout that we're focusing on. This is the bulk of what you put down in your training journal. If we're looking at doing, say, a body weight session, or we're looking at doing a session with band, that is going to be the core of your framework. Or maybe you're doing a completely different type of activity today, and let's say that you go out and instead of doing anything weight training oriented, you're hitting your high intensity, but you're going to hit that high intensity with doing sprint. And when I say to do sprints, you can go out and you can run sprints, but that's not the only way that you can sprint. You can do sprints on a bike, where you're pedaling fast for 30 seconds at a time, and then you're slowing down and giving your body some recovery time, and then you repeat that. It's a sprint session where you're maximizing, you're at 95 to 100% intensity in a sprint sequence. So if you're doing things of that nature, again, this is the core of your workout. This is step 3 in the framework, but your dynamic stretch activities, your warm-up activities were leading you up to that core activity. Now, you've completed the core of your workout, and now it's time to start coming back down the other side of the hill. We want to start leaning into more of a cool down phase, and this is where, when we talk about step 4 in the framework, this is where we can start to implement some of those static stretches at. So let's say, for example, that you've been doing some chest work with your workout. Maybe you were doing some push-ups, or maybe you were doing some fly types of activities, and you were contracting your pec muscles. Well, what we can do is we can use, after that blood flow has increased into that muscle tissue, after we've stretched that muscle tissue with the activity, now what we can do is we can use a static stretch. And that static stretch is where we can hold that stretch at the end range of motion, or close to that end range of motion, and get the benefit at that point. Because now, when we do this, you have to understand that there's a neurological component to this, and you're shutting off certain aspects of your nervous system intentionally. It's part of the benefit. It's what helps that muscle relax so you can't elongate that muscle. But that's not something that we want to have happen when the next part of the process is going to be, we're going to be using that muscle at a high intensity. That's why we save our static stretches for the end. There's less risk of injury when we do a static stretch at the end. It's not to say that static stretches can't be beneficial. They absolutely can. And that's why I still think they're important to put in as step 4 of this framework. But we want to make sure that we're not using that at the wrong time. Now, the very last part of this activity, or your activity sequence of your framework, is going to be your cool down. And a cool down can be a lot of different things. I'll give you a couple of examples. So probably the most simplistic cool down you can do is just go walk around. Just let your heart rate come down, let your blood flow stabilize, your heart rate will come back down. You can do something like that. One of the things that I like to do, especially after a leg workout or doing some squatting where I've had weights pressing down on me, is I like to just, in this rack here behind me, I like to just reach up and grab the bar across the top and do a 1-arm hang or a 2-arm hang, and hang there anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half, and just let my body just relax. That's what I'm doing. And what my thought process is here is that I'm reflecting back on the activities that I just did. I'm looking at what I was able to accomplish, and I'm thinking about, I'm going to go over to my training journal and I'm going to finalize my workout in my training journal. So it's the cool down. So let's go back and just real quickly here refresh on this 5-step framework. And remember, you started off before these 5 steps, you did a review on your training journal, but you've got your initial warm-up, you've got your dynamic stretching in here, you've got your core activities that you're going to be engaging in, you've got the static stretching, and you're going to finish up with a cool down. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot of different parts here, guys, each one of these parts is taking just a few minutes. They're not adding a lot of time to your workouts at all. And actually the way that I would suggest doing these different parts that I've suggested is, there are these different parts that I've recommended, is I would look at what your focal point of your workout is and do your warm-ups in a manner where it's getting you warmed up to do that activity. So there's a natural progression, and then you're cooling down and doing your static stretching of the same tissues that you were focusing on in your core workout. So it all blends together. It's just a way I'm giving you a stepwise process of how to think about that. So use that next time you look to engage in some physical activity. I think you'll find it very refreshing to have an order of events that you can easily flow through and know that once you get to the end of them, hey, you feel accomplished with your workout for today. Guys, listen, if you are looking for more information in regards to the things that I've been talking about, make sure you come back to the channel here and hit that subscribe button. I'm going to continue to bring you content like this. And also, if you're looking for more information as far as what I do with my patients, you can go to drarlandhill.com. And if you want to see what we do out at the ranch in raising food and producing food that is uncompromised in any way, shape, or form, go to harvesthillsranch.com. Until next time, I'm Dr. Arland Hill, and I look forward to seeing you soon.